The Grand Archive of was the oldest building in the known galaxy. Its halls stretched for thousands of kilometers, filled with crystals that held the memories of 10,000 civilizations. Every species that had ever joined the Galactic Council had their history stored here. Every war, every peace treaty, every small moment of beauty and horror was recorded in perfect detail. Archivist Oral floated through these halls with the quiet confidence of someone who had done this work for 3,000 years. His body was made of living crystal, and light passed through him like water through glass. He was old even by the standards of his ancient species, and he had named over 200 sentient races during his long career. Today, he had been given what should have been a simple task. The humans of Sol 3, a small blue planet on the outer edge of the galaxy, needed their true name. They had been part of the galactic community for 300 years now, always called by the placeholder name, Terrans. It was time to give them a proper designation, one that would be spoken across all worlds and recorded in the Eternal Codex forever. Oral had expected this to take a few days. Humans seemed unremarkable enough. They were curious and adaptable, quick to learn new technologies, but nothing special. The galaxy had thousands of species like them. He began his research the way he always did, by studying there first. The first warning came when he examined Earth's geological history. The planet was violent in ways that made no sense. Massive volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun for years. Asteroids that struck the surface and killed almost everything alive. Ice ages that covered entire continents in frozen death. The planet had experienced 5 mass extinction events, each one killing most of the life that existed. Oral paused. This was unusual. Most species evolved on stable worlds, planets where conditions stayed relatively constant for millions of years. Earth was not stable. Earth was a death trap. He continued reading, expecting to find that humans had evolved during a calm period in their planet's history. Instead, he found the opposite. Humans had evolved during one of the most unstable periods of all. Their ancestors had survived ice ages, supervolcanoes, and predators that should have wiped them out completely. But they had not just survived. They had spread across their entire world. They had learned to live in frozen wastelands, burning deserts, thick jungles, and everything in between. No environment on their planet had stopped them. Oral's crystal body flickered with the first hint of unease. He moved on to their recorded history. What he found there made him stop completely. The humans had been keeping records for only about 5,000 years, a tiny fraction of galactic history. In that short time, they had fought wars that all understanding, not small tribal conflicts, which were normal for developing species. These were organized campaigns of destruction on a scale that Oral had never seen in any pre-civilization. He read about something called the World Wars. In the first one, humans had killed 17 million of their own kind. In the second one, they had killed 70 million. They had invented weapons specifically designed to kill as many of their own species as possible. Poison gas, bombs that could flatten entire cities. And then, at the end of their second Great War, they had done something that made Oral's ancient mind freeze with horror. They had split the atom. They had created weapons capable of destroying their entire civilization, and they had used them. They had dropped nuclear fire on 2 of their own cities, killing hundreds of thousands in an instant. Oral searched the archives desperately, looking for what must have come next. Surely this was the end of human civilization. Surely they had collapsed into chaos and destruction like so many other species who discovered such power too early. But they had not collapsed. Within 4 years of creating nuclear weapons, they had created the first international body dedicated to preventing future wars. Within 20 years, they had put a human on their moon. Within 50 years, they had mapped their own genetic code. Within 100 years, they had begun reaching toward the stars. They had not destroyed themselves. They had looked into the face of their own extinction and simply kept going. Oral read faster now, his light flickering with growing alarm. He found more wars, more violence, more death. But he also found something else. He found humans building hospitals in war zones. He found them sending aid to enemies who had tried to destroy them just years before. He found them creating art and music and literature even as bombs fell around them. They were not like other species. When other species faced extinction, they either died or they retreated into isolation. Humans did neither. They adapted. They grew. They turned their trauma into fuel for progress. The archivist read about something called the Cold War, a 50-year period when humans had lived with enough nuclear weapons pointed at each other to destroy their world several times over. Any other species would have been paralyzed by such fear. Humans had used that time to develop computers, the internet, and space travel. They had lived with apocalypse as their neighbor and had built a technological revolution anyway. Oral stopped reading. His crystal form had turned dark with an emotion his species had not felt in 4,000 years. It took him a moment to recognize it. Fear. He was afraid of the humans. Not because they were evil. He had seen evil species before, and humans were not that. Not because they were cruel. Many species were cruel, and while humans could certainly be cruel, they could also be remarkably kind. He was afraid because they were impossible. Every model of species development said that humans should not exist. A species that violent should have destroyed itself long ago. A species from a world that hostile should never have reached sentience. A species that spent so much energy fighting itself should never have had enough left over to build a civilization, let alone reach the stars. But here they were, 300 years as members of the galactic community, learning alien languages faster than any species on record, adapting to new technologies with unsettling speed, making friends and allies across 100 worlds. The galaxy had welcomed them as harmless primitives, as children who needed guidance and protection. The galaxy had been wrong. Oral gathered his research and prepared his report. He knew what humanity's true name must be, and he knew the council needed to hear it. Not in some minor ceremony attended by a few bureaucrats, but in a full session of the chamber of 10,000 voices. He sent his request to the High Council with the highest priority classification. Emergency session. Full attendance required. Subject: the true naming of the human species. The response came within hours. His request was granted. The session would be held in 3 days. Oral spent those 3 days organizing his findings, but he could not shake the feeling that he was about to change everything. For 300 years, the galaxy had treated humans as junior partners, as a species with potential but nothing remarkable. That was about to end. As he prepared his testimony, Oral found himself wondering something that had never occurred to him in 3,000 years of naming species. He wondered if perhaps some truths were better left undiscovered, if perhaps some names were better left unspoken. But it was too late for such doubts now. The council had to know what they had invited into their midst. They had to understand what humanity truly was. The naming ceremony was about to become something far more important. It was about to become a warning. The Chamber of 10,000 Voices was the largest structure ever built by the Galactic Council. It floated in the empty space between 3 star systems, a massive sphere of metal and crystal that could hold representatives from every known species. Holographic projectors allowed beings from across the galaxy to attend without leaving there, their images flickering into existence in their assigned seats. Today, every seat was filled. Hai watched the assembly with growing unease. Her species communicated through bioluminescent pulses, and right now her body was flashing in patterns that revealed her worry. She had led the council for 200 years and had never seen anything like this. An archivist requesting an emergency session for a naming ceremony. It was unheard of. She called the assembly to order, and 10,000 voices fell silent. Oral floated to the center of the chamber. His crystal body caught the light from 1,000 holographic projectors, breaking it into rainbows that scattered across the walls. When he spoke, his voice was calm and measured, translated instantly into every language in the galaxy. "Honored representatives," he began, "I come before you today to fulfill my duty as archivist. I have been tasked with determining the true name of the species known as humans, from the planet they call Earth." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Many representatives had worked with humans over the past 3 centuries. They were known as friendly, curious, sometimes a bit too energetic, but generally harmless. What could possibly require a full council session? Oral continued. "To determine a true name, I must study a species completely. Their world, their history, their nature. I have done this for over 200 species. I have never found anything like what I found when I studied humanity." He raised one crystalline appendage, and a holographic image of Earth appeared in the center of the chamber. The small blue planet hung in the darkness, looking peaceful and beautiful. "This is Earth," Oral said. "It appears calm. It is not. This planet has experienced 5 mass extinction events: asteroid impacts, volcanic winters, ice ages that covered entire continents. Life on Earth has been nearly destroyed multiple times. Most planets this violent never produce sentient life at all." The image changed, showing geological data, charts and graphs that painted a picture of a world in constant chaos. Humans did not evolve during a stable period. They evolved during one of the most unstable eras in their planet's history. They survived ice ages, super predators, and environmental changes that should have killed them. But they did not merely survive. They conquered their entire world. Representative Al of the Mindful Concordat raised a tentacle. "Many species come from harsh worlds. They evolved on a volcanic moon. They come from a world of constant storms. Difficult origins are not unusual." "You are correct," Oral replied. "What makes humans different is not their world alone. It is what they did to each other once they became intelligent." The holographic display changed again. Now it showed images that made many representatives look away. Battlefields covered in bodies, cities reduced to rubble, weapons of terrible design. In the last 5,000 years of their recorded history, humans have fought over 14,000 wars against each other. Not small conflicts between tribes, organized campaigns of destruction that killed millions. The chamber had gone completely silent. Even species known for their love of battle were staring in disbelief. Their first global conflict killed 17 million of their own kind. 20 years later, they fought another that killed 70 million. They developed poison gas to kill soldiers in their trenches. They built bombs that could level entire cities. And then, in the final days of their Second Great War, they did something unprecedented. The image changed to show a mushroom cloud rising over a ruined city. They split the atom. They created weapons capable of destroying their entire civilization, and they used them, twice, against their own species. Heiss bioluminescent patterns had gone completely dark. She was not the only one. Across the chamber, representatives were showing signs of shock, fear, and disbelief. "But this is not what makes humans truly frightening," Oral continued. "What makes them frightening is what happened next." He paused, letting the silence stretch. They did not destroy themselves. They did not collapse into chaos. Within 4 years of creating nuclear weapons, they formed international organizations dedicated to preventing future wars. Within 24 years, they put a human on their moon. Within 50 years, they decoded their own genetic structure. They took the fire that nearly consumed them and used it to light their way to the stars. A representative from the hollow world spoke up, her voice shaking. How is that possible? Any species that violent should have destroyed itself long before reaching space." "That is the question I have spent many sleepless cycles trying to answer," Oral admitted. "And I believe I have found the answer. It lies in understanding what humans truly are. He raised both appendages, and the display showed a timeline of human history, wars and peace treaties, empires rising and falling, art and science flourishing even in the darkest times. Humans are not merely violent. Many species are violent. Humans are not merely survivors. Many species survive hardship. Humans are something else entirely. They are a species that has stared into the face of extinction over and over again, often by their own hand, and has refused to die. The archivist's voice grew heavier. They build weapons that can end worlds, then build organizations to prevent those weapons from ever being used. They wage wars that kill millions, then rebuild their enemies' cities and call them allies within a generation. They experience horrors that would break any other species, then write poetry about hope. He turned slowly, addressing the entire chamber. We have studied 4,847 sentient species in this galaxy. Humanity is the only one that has developed the capacity for total self-annihilation multiple times and chosen, each time, to step back from the edge. They do not avoid darkness. They walk through it and emerge stronger. Finally spoke, "What are you telling us, Archivist? What is the meaning of all this?" Oral faced her directly. "I am telling you that for 300 years, we have treated humans as children. We have patted them on the head and called them promising. We have given them seats at minor councils and allowed them to participate in trade agreements. We have believed that we were nurturing a young species with potential." His crystal body pulsed with colors that conveyed deep, profound concern. "We were wrong. We have not been nurturing children. We have been sitting across the table from the most dangerous species this galaxy has ever produced. We invited apex predators to dinner and convinced ourselves they were pets." The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives shouted questions, demanded explanations, called for calm. It took several minutes for order to be restored. When silence finally returned, asked the question that everyone was thinking. "What is their true name, Archivist? What do you call a species like this?" Oral had known this moment would come. He had practiced the word in every language, felt its weight in every possible translation. It was a name that would change how the galaxy saw humanity forever. He spoke it clearly, letting the translation matrices carry it to every ear, every mind, every consciousness in the chamber. The effect was immediate. 3 representatives from different species lost consciousness. Dozens more began making sounds of distress. The ambassador, a species known for their fearlessness in battle, physically retreated from his position. His bioluminescent patterns flickered wildly, then went completely dark. In the visitors' gallery, a young human woman named Sarah watched everything with growing concern. She was a junior diplomatic, sent to observe what should have been a routine ceremony. Now she understood that her species' place in the galaxy was about to change completely. The name still hung in the air, translated into 10,000 languages, each version carrying the same terrible weight. And the galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. The word spread through the chamber like a wave of cold water. It came through every translation matrix in the voice most suited to create fear. For species that heard sound, it was a low rumble like approaching thunder. For species that communicated through light, it was a sharp flash of warning red. For the telepathic species, it arrived as a feeling of something ancient and hungry awakening from sleep. The archivist had not chosen this name lightly. In all his 3,000 years of work, he had never assigned such a designation. The name was reserved for theoretical species, creatures that existed only in nightmares and worst-case scenarios. It described beings who came from worlds so hostile that survival itself required becoming something terrible. Now he had given it to the friendly, curious humans, who had been trading with the galaxy for 3 centuries. The chamber remained in chaos for nearly an hour. Medical teams attended to the representatives who had fainted. Security officers moved to positions around the room, though no one was quite sure what they were securing against. The human observers were asked to remain in their gallery, surrounded by guards who looked more afraid than watchful. Sarah sat very still. She was 32 years old, a career diplomat who had spent a decade working to strengthen humanity's ties with the galactic community. She had believed, truly believed, that humans were making progress, that they were becoming accepted members of galactic civilization. Now she watched alien beings look at her like she was a monster wearing a friendly mask. When order was finally restored, Hai rose to speak. Her bioluminescent patterns were active again, but they pulsed in slow, uncertain rhythms. "Archivist Oral," she said carefully, "this is a serious accusation. The designation has never been applied to an actual species. You are saying that humans are something out of our darkest myths." "I am saying," Oral replied, "that our darkest myths were inspired by species like humans. The difference is that those species destroyed themselves before they could reach the stars. Humans did not." Representative Al spoke up again. "Surely there is some mistake. I have worked with humans for decades. They are passionate, yes, sometimes aggressive, but they are also kind. They care about other species. They have built hospitals on worlds that have no connection to Earth. They have shared technologies freely. These are not the actions of monsters." "No," Oral agreed. "They are not, and that is precisely what makes humans so dangerous." He moved to the center of the chamber, his crystal body catching light from every direction. "Consider what I have told you. Humans have the capacity for terrible violence. They have killed hundreds of millions of their own kind. They have created weapons that could sterilize planets, and yet they are also capable of profound compassion. The same species that invented genocide invented human rights. The same minds that built nuclear bombs built hospitals and schools and charities." He turned slowly, addressing every section of the chamber. "Most species are either violent or peaceful. Humans are both. They contain within themselves the capacity for the greatest destruction and the greatest kindness. They choose, moment by moment, which they will be, and they make this choice while carrying the memory of exactly how much damage they can do." The ambassador, who had recovered enough to return to his seat, spoke for the first time. His species were raiders, feared throughout several sectors for their brutality. "You speak of them as warriors. I have studied human warfare. Their tactics are impressive but not unique." "You have studied their recent conflicts," Oral said. "Small wars with limited objectives. You have not studied what they are capable of when they truly commit to destruction." He brought up new images, a city before and after something called firebombing, maps showing the movement of something called the Mongol Empire, numbers representing deaths in something called the 30 Years' War. "When humans fight without restraint, they do not stop until their enemies are utterly broken. They burn cities, salt fields, and erase cultures from existence. Their history is filled with examples of complete destruction. And the most frightening part is not their capacity for such violence. It is their capacity to recover from it." The images changed to show the same destroyed cities rebuilt. New nations rising from the ashes of old empires. Former enemies becoming allies within a single generation. They do not carry grudges the way other species do. They can forgive almost anything given time. They rebuild what they destroy. They turn enemies into friends, and then, if necessary, they do it all again. Sarah felt something changing inside her as she listened. At first, she had wanted to stand up and defend her people, to explain that humans were not the monsters this archivist was describing. But as she listened more carefully, she began to understand something. Oral was not calling humans evil. He was calling them something more complicated than that. He was describing a species that contained multitudes, that could swing between extremes of destruction and creation with bewildering speed. He was describing, she realized, exactly what humans were. Hai raised her hand for silence. I must ask the question that no one wants to ask. If humans are as dangerous as you describe, why have they not turned their violence against the galaxy? They have been among us for 3 centuries. They have had countless opportunities to wage war against other species. Why have they remained peaceful? Oral's response was quiet but carried through the entire chamber. Because they choose to. Because they have experienced enough destruction to know its cost. Because they are, despite everything, a species that wants to be good. He paused. But choice is not the same as nature. A peaceful human is still a human. The capacity for destruction remains. It only needs the right trigger to emerge. What kind of trigger? Someone asked. Threat to their survival, threat to their loved ones, threat to what they consider their home, which now includes colonies on 17 worlds. Oral's colors shifted to deep blues and purples. We have seen humans at their most peaceful. We have not seen what they become when they feel truly endangered. Based on their history, I do not wish to find out. The chamber fell silent again. Representatives looked at each other, then at the human observers in the gallery, then back at the archivist. Sarah stood up. Every eye in the chamber turned to her. She felt the weight of 10,000 gazes, the fear and uncertainty of beings who had just learned that the universe was more dangerous than they thought. "May I speak?" she asked. Hai hesitated, then nodded. "You may." Sarah walked to the railing of the gallery. Her voice was calm, though her heart was pounding. Everything the archivist has said is true. We are everything he described. We have killed each other in numbers that shame us. We have built weapons that could end everything we love. We have done terrible, terrible things. She took a breath. But we have also looked at our worst moments and decided to be better. We have created laws to protect the weak. We have built systems to prevent the powerful from abusing their strength. We have taken the darkness in our nature and built walls around it, not because we are incapable of violence, but because we know exactly how capable we are. She looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes as she could. You call us fine. We come from a world that tried to kill us and we refused to die. But we did not become monsters. We became something that could look at monsters and say no. We became something that could choose. The chamber was utterly silent. Sarah had said her piece. Now she could only wait to see how the galaxy would respond to the truth about humanity. The naming ceremony was over. The consequences had only just begun. In the days that followed the naming ceremony, the galaxy went quiet. On the trading world of Nexus Prime, human merchants found that their regular customers no longer came to their stalls. The aliens who did appear kept their distance, conducted business quickly, and left without the usual pleasantries that made trade so enjoyable. One merchant, a woman named Maria who had run her shop for 20 years, watched her oldest customer hurry away without making eye contact. On the colony world of New Helsinki, human children noticed that their alien friends no longer came to play. Parents made excuses, were canceled. The mixed-species schools that had been sources of such pride suddenly had invisible walls running through them. On 17 different worlds, in hundreds of different cities, millions of humans experienced the same thing. A coldness had settled over their relationships with the galaxy. Invitations stopped coming. Communications went unanswered. The warmth that had been building for 3 centuries cooled in a matter of days. Sarah, now promoted to emergency diplomatic liaison, worked without sleep trying to repair the damage. She sent messages to every council representative who would listen. She requested meetings that were politely declined. She wrote reports that went unread. The galaxy was afraid, and fear, she knew, could become something much worse if left unchecked. But something else was happening too, something unexpected. There had been a threat to the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Their hive-minded species expanded constantly, consuming resources and destroying any civilization in their path. The Council had fought 17 wars against them, each one ending in an uneasy truce that both sides knew would eventually break. 3 weeks after the nomming ceremony, the completely from the disputed system, they had been pushing into that territory for decades, building military bases and positioning fleets for what everyone assumed would be their 18th war with the Council. Now they simply left. Council intelligence officers were baffled. They never retreated. They never gave up territory without a fight. Something must have happened, some internal conflict or resource shortage that forced them to pull back. Then a message was intercepted. It was from the Supreme Mind to its military commanders, and it contained only one relevant sentence. They have expanded into adjacent sectors. Avoid all contact. Do not provoke. The humans had a small mining colony 3 systems away from. It had been there for 40 years, barely noticed by anyone. Now they were treating it like a fortress filled with warriors. Similar reports came in from across the galaxy. The raiders, who had plagued shipping lanes for generations, quietly rerouted their operations away from any route that might bring them near human ships. 3 separate criminal organizations that had been expanding into human space suddenly pulled back and focused elsewhere. Enemies of the Council, species that had ignored treaties and threatened wars, were retreating from humanity without a shot being fired. Sarah received a classified report that made her sit down heavily in her chair. Several minor species, worlds that had been bullied and threatened for centuries, had sent requests to the Council. They wanted human military observers stationed in their systems, not as conquerors, not as occupiers, as deterrents. The same terror that was isolating humanity from its friends was protecting others from their enemies. She was still processing this when the summons came. Hai wanted to meet with her privately. No aides, no recorders, no other representatives, just the 2 of them. Sarah arrived at this private chambers with no idea what to expect. The room was sparse, designed for a being who communicated through light rather than sound. Weighted in the center, her body pulsing with soft colors that Sarah had learned to read over years of diplomatic work. Uncertainty, worry, and underneath it all something that might have been curiosity. "Thank you for coming," said through her translator. "Please sit." Sarah sat on a chair that adjusted to her human form. "Thank you for seeing me. I've been trying to reach you for weeks." "I know, I apologize for the delay." Colors shifted. "I needed time to think, we all did." "And what did you think about?" "About fear. About what it makes us do." They moved closer. "My species was almost destroyed 4,000 years ago. A disease swept through our worlds and killed 90% of our population. We survived, but we have never forgotten that terror. It shaped everything we became." She paused. "I think I understand your species now in a way I did not before. You have experienced that fear many times, not from disease or disaster but from yourselves. You have stood at the edge of extinction and pulled back, over and over." Sarah nodded slowly. "We have." "How do you live with that knowledge? How do you wake up every day knowing what your species is capable of?" It was the question Sarah had been asking herself since the nomming ceremony. She had thought about it during the sleepless nights, the unanswered messages, the cold looks from former friends. "We make choices," she said finally. "Every day, billions of humans choose to be kind instead of cruel, to build instead of destroy, to help instead of hurt. Not because we don't know how to be terrible, but because we do know and we choose differently anyway. And if someone threatens those choices, if someone pushes your species back to the edge." Sarah met this glowing eyes. "Then I hope the galaxy never finds out what happens next. Not because I want to protect humanity's reputation, because I genuinely don't know what we would become. We have never been pushed that hard since we joined the Council. I pray we never are." Was quiet for a long moment. Her colors shifted through patterns that Sarah couldn't interpret. "There are those on the Council who want to isolate your species," they finally said. to push you out of the systems you occupy, to cut you off from trade and communication. They believe that the safest galaxy is one where humans are contained. Sarah felt her heart sink. And what do you believe? I believe that would be the most dangerous mistake we could make. Your species does not respond well to being caged. Your history makes that very clear. Moved even closer. I believe the opposite. I believe we should bring you closer. Give you more responsibility, more involvement, more reasons to care about what happens to the rest of us. You want to make us invested in the galaxy's success. I want to make the galaxy your home, not just a place you live, but a place you would fight to protect. The scholars settled into something steady. The retreated because they fear what you might do if threatened. Imagine what would happen if they knew that threatening any council world would be seen as threatening humanity. Sarah stared at her. You want us to be the galaxy's guardians. I want you to be the galaxy's family. Families protect each other. Families fight for each other. His voice grew soft. And families forgive each other, even when they are afraid. For the first time in weeks, Sarah felt something like hope. It was small, fragile, easily crushed, but it was there. There will be opposition, she said. Many species will never trust us now. Trust is earned. You will have to earn it again, one relationship at a time. Extended a limb in a gesture that Sarah recognized as an offer of partnership. But you will not be alone. Some of us understand that the most dangerous thing in the galaxy would be humans with nothing left to lose. We intend to make sure you always have something worth protecting. Sarah reached out and touched the offered limb. It was cool and slightly damp, nothing like a human hand. But the gesture was universal. Then let's get started, she said. We have a lot of work to do. Somewhere across the galaxy, they continued their retreat. The raiders chose new targets far from human space, and in 100 different places, beings who had spent their lives fearing the strong began to wonder if perhaps they had found new protectors. The silence was beginning to break. What would take its place remained to be seen. 1 year had passed since the naming ceremony. Sarah, now officially ambassador to the Galactic Council, stood in the reception hall of Earth Station 1 and tried to calm her nerves. Today was the most important day in human diplomatic history, and everything had to go perfectly. They were coming. Not to invade, not to threaten, to talk. For over 1,000 years, the species had been the galaxy's greatest threat. Their hive minds consumed everything in their path, and their endless expansion had caused wars that killed billions. No one had ever successfully negotiated with them. Their only language was conquest. Until now. They had requested this meeting themselves. They had sent a diplomatic vessel instead of a warship. They had followed every protocol, observed every courtesy. The galaxy watched in disbelief as the most aggressive species in known space asked humanity for a conversation. Sarah understood why. They were not stupid. They had seen what happened when species pushed humanity too far. They had read the same history that Archivist Oral had presented to the Council, and they had done the math. Humanity was not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the most advanced or the most numerous, but they were the most dangerous, and they had finally realized that some fights were not worth having. The reception hall was filled with human security officers and diplomatic staff. In the observation gallery above, representatives from 17 species watched through reinforced glass. Some were there out of curiosity. Others were there to see if humanity would prove the galaxy's fears right or wrong. Sarah had spent a year working to rebuild trust. She had visited worlds that had cut off contact with humans and sat patiently through hours of accusations and fears. She had answered the same questions over and over. Are you dangerous? Will you hurt us? Can we trust you? Her answer was always the same. Yes, we are dangerous. No, we will not hurt you. Trust must be earned, and we are willing to earn it. Slowly, painfully, things had begun to change. Trade resumed. Communications reopened. Human children played with alien children again. The cold silence was replaced by something warmer, though it would never be the easy friendship that had existed before. Now the greatest test of all was about to walk through her door. The airlock cycled open, and the ambassador entered. It was larger than Sarah had expected. The stood nearly 3 meters tall, its exoskeleton gleaming with colors that shifted as it moved. Multiple eyes studied her with an intelligence that was unsettling in its alienness. Behind it, 2 smaller entered and took positions by the door. Sarah stepped forward and extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting. She had no idea if they would understand it. The ambassador studied her hand for a long moment. Then it raised one of its own limbs and touched her palm gently. "Ambassador," it said through its translator. The voice was artificial but carefully modulated to sound non-threatening. "I am designated speaker for the many. I bring greetings from the Supreme Mind." "Speaker for the many," Sarah replied. "Welcome to Earth Station 1. Humanity is honored by your presence." The words were formal, but they both knew this meeting was about something far more important than pleasantries. The galaxy's greatest enemy had come to humanity's door not to fight, but to understand. They moved to a conference room that had been prepared for the meeting. Sarah had chosen to keep it simple: a table, chairs adapted for different body types, and windows that looked out at the stars. No displays of military power, no subtle threats, just 2 species sitting down to talk. The ambassador settled into its position and fixed all its eyes on Sarah. "We have studied your species. We do not understand how you became what you are." Sarah had expected this. It was the same question had asked her a year ago, the same question that everyone in the galaxy seemed to be asking. "What do you want to know?" "Everything." The ambassador's mandibles clicked. "Your world should have killed you. Your violence against yourselves should have destroyed you. You should not exist, and yet you do. We must understand how this is possible." Sarah thought carefully before answering. This was not just a diplomatic meeting. It was a chance to show the galaxy what humanity truly was. "Our world tried to kill us," she said. "And yes, we tried to kill ourselves. But every time we came close to the edge, we found something that pulled us back. Not just survival instinct, something more." "What?" "Hope." Sarah leaned forward. "We are not a species that accepts endings. When things get dark, when everything seems lost, we find reasons to keep going. We look at destroyed cities and imagine them rebuilt. We look at enemies and imagine them as friends. We look at the worst versions of ourselves and decide to become something better." The ambassador was silent for a moment. "This is not logical. Hope is not a survival strategy." "No, it's not, but it's what makes us human." Sarah smiled, knowing that the expression might mean nothing to her mind. "We are not driven by logic alone. We are driven by something stranger and more powerful. We believe, against all evidence, that tomorrow can be better than today, and then we work to make that belief come true. This belief has caused much of your suffering. Your hope for better futures has led you into wars and conflicts that killed millions." "Yes, it has." Sarah did not look away. "We are not perfect. We have never claimed to be. We are a species that contains both angels and demons, and sometimes the demons win. But the important thing is that we keep fighting. We keep choosing. We keep trying to be better." The ambassador's colors shifted through patterns that Sarah could not read. "The Supreme Mind has debated this for many cycles. We do not understand why you have not tried to conquer the galaxy. You have the capability. Your history suggests you would be effective at it. Why do you not?" This was the question Sarah had been waiting for, the one that mattered most. "Because conquest is not who we want to be," she said simply. "We know what we are capable of. We have seen our worst selves. And we have decided that we do not want to be that again, not because we can't, but because we choose not to." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "There is a story my grandfather used to tell me. He survived one of our worst wars. He saw things that would break most people, and when it was over, he went home. He married my grandmother. He planted a garden. He spent the rest of his life teaching children to read. She turned back to the ambassador. That is who we are, not the monsters you fear, not the saints some hope for. We are people who walk through darkness and choose to plant gardens anyway. We take our trauma and turn it into fuel for something better. The ambassador was still for a long moment. Then its mandibles clicked in a pattern that the translator rendered as surprised laughter. You are strange beings, humans. You make no sense. I know, Sarah grinned. We don't make sense to ourselves most of the time, but we're still figuring it out. Want to help? The ambassador rose to its full height, all its eyes focused on Sarah with an intensity that should have been frightening. The Supreme Mind has authorized me to propose something unprecedented, a formal peace between our species, not a truce, not a ceasefire, true peace with open communication and shared knowledge. Sarah felt her heart skip. This was more than she had dared hope for. In exchange for what? In exchange for understanding, we wish to study your species, not to find weaknesses but to learn how you do what you do, how you survive what should destroy you, how you choose hope when logic demands despair. The ambassador moved closer. We have conquered many worlds, but we have never understood what makes a species truly strong. We believe you may have the answer. Sarah extended her hand again. Then let's find it together. This time the ambassador did not hesitate. It took her hand in its limb, and across the galaxy, billions of beings watched as the impossible happened. The galaxy's greatest enemy shook hands. In the observation gallery, representatives from 17 species began talking excitedly among themselves. The mindful Concordat were already drafting proposals for expanded cooperation. The ambassador, watching from a distance, sent a message to his people telling them that perhaps it was time to reconsider their relationship with humanity. And somewhere in the archives of Archivist Oral added a new note to humanity's file. True name, updated classification, potential galactic guardians, recommendation, continued observation and engagement. Beneath all the formal language, he added one final comment that would not appear in any official record. They are terrifying, they are impossible, and they may be exactly what this galaxy needs. The galaxy had learned humanity's true name. Now they were learning something even more important. What humanity chose to do with that name was up to them. And so far they were choosing hope.